to bridge the gap in tomato production following the ban on export of the commodity by its northern neighbors. Burkina Bay authorities have set March 30 as deadline for all export of tomatoes to cease. Now, government is ramping up its efforts to bridge the gap in tomato production following the ban on export of the commodity by its northern neighbors. Burkina Bay authorities have set March 30 as deadline for all export of tomatoes to cease, a move Ghanaian authorities say will pick up their counterparts with a deficit of more than 300,000 tons. Some experts have projected 4 years for the nation to bridge this gap. The gap has forced the presidential initiative in agriculture and agribusiness to hit the ground on finding quick ways to close the gap. George Queenan is with the team and is joining us with some details now. George, what is the solution as far as the the initiative on agribusiness is concerned?
A very good afternoon, Kemini, and we are coming to you live from Weja Tuba here in Accra. And if you are not aware, there's some sort of crisis when it comes to tomato production in Ghana. There's some sort of ban on tomato import. And it would interest you to know that here in Ghana, we consume some 1.3 million tons of tomato annually, and we can only produce 380,000 tons. And so the issue about tomato is of great concern. And if you even want to take a careful look at your meals you take in a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, there's some sort of tomato in that very meal. So yes, if this ban should actually take force, it means it will have great repercussions for us. So it's a reason the initiative is here to engage the farmers here at Weja to see how possible we can actually tackle this very issue head on. Some of the farmers have already spoken. Their concerns here, their lands have been encroached on. Salinity levels has compelled them not to even harvest part of the land, and also want agrochemicals, fertilizers and all that to make sure some of these things that the initiative wants to be fruitful can actually materialize. Dr. Peter Boamo Tukono is the director of the Presidential Initiative in Agriculture and Agribusiness. He said a lot, but one interesting thing that I picked from his submission is the fact that he says this very ban is more like, a miracle in disguise, or a blessing in disguise, he tells me. How so is it? A blessing in disguise, this very ban?
Well, it's certainly a blessing in disguise because it's long overdue. If you look at the potential of growing tomatoes in Ghana, and even the competitiveness level of our tomato production is higher than all the other countries surrounding us. But because of lack of focus and investment in the sector, and because the value chain has not been structured in a way that it can sustain the farmers do not cultivate. What you must bear in mind is that the varieties that Ghanaians preferred most is the Navrongo variety, and it was grown here. The name is called Navrongo. The varieties they bring from Burkina Faso is a variation of the Navrongo, which they pick from Ghana. And so what it means is that if we are able to grow that variety, we are able to develop that variety, commercialize that variety, get our farmers supported to grow more of that variety, we wouldn't be needing to go outside. The challenge is that the farmers do not get the market when they produce the other varieties. And those other varieties, which are mainly varieties, do not give the higher yield. And so even though they are getting low market differences, because it makes their, we like Banku and Shito, and the Shito must taste, nicer. And because they are not even getting that, it is causing some of the food sellers to even add margin. But not to cut you short. So when you even produce that one, the market women will not buy, and so it will go away. And that's why there is a need for a new value chain paradigm, which we are trying to promote this. Talking about varieties, you said develop new varieties. Here, Hopia. So you're just going to give this to the farmers free, give them fertilizers, and so they'll not be going to the bank for loans and all that. Essentially, for the targeted areas where we want them to go throughout, like the Weja Tuba irrigation drive, where we are encouraging all the farmers to sow tomato production. Because some of them are now doing various crops because they were making their own decisions based on the market. We would have to incentivize them, and by way of incentivizing them, we
you need to give them the fertilizer, you need to give them the seed. And as Honorable Ekopoku announced 3 days ago.
Honorable Ekopoku announced 3 days ago, efforts are and the fertilizer to be made available to the farmers so that they can immediately move into the stream of production. There are some that are already producing. We are encouraging them to do the production as those inputs supports come in, so that they do not have to worry about getting loans and getting loan sharks chasing them here and there.
They're really happy when they mentioned that, but you are giving them fertilizers, you are giving them new varieties, and you're expecting between 15,000 and 20,000 metric tons. Is it not too ambitious?
Well, if the full capacity of this site is put to full use, we would be able to get that. And seeds that we are giving them are high yielding seeds, and if the cultural practices or the agricultural practices are done in the order in which they are trained to do them, we would be able to meet that. And as they mentioned earlier, last year they did about 5,000 metric tons, and this is the time when there was no intervention. It was only fertilizer that was given to them. But remember, when you give them only fertilizer, some are growing cabbage, lettuce, so they will use it on those ones. So now that we are centralizing the effort on tomatoes, we believe that we'll be able to quadruple the output from this irrigation site.
Doctor, the last time I saw you, you were in cocoa farms. So would you say you were done with that engagement, and that this very whole crisis in tomato sector is what has compelled you to let's do tomato? You were done with cocoa and that you're actually doing tomato?
The issues of cocoa has been dealt with, but essentially the thing about agriculture is that it is multifaceted, and you will need an integrated, simultaneous approach to deal with everything. So you can't say that it is only tomato, you are dealing with tomato, so you will leave the others. So as we are here, we are still dealing with cocoa, and there are cocoa issues that we are working on to improve variety, to expand production, to expand coverage, grow more plantations, do rehabilitation. And I'm sure you heard in the news that government have had to secure some money from World Bank to do the rehabilitation, because our friends didn't do the rehabilitation over the last 8 years. They took loans of over $350 million and didn't commit it to the rehabilitation. So there are issues that we have had to resolve, but you have to resolve in every value chain. Just last week, I had to meet the Ghana Rice Millers and the Producers Association, and a section of the various smaller, cooperatives that are working in the rice and the maize value chain, and essentially was to deal with issues with rice and maize as well. And so you can't leave any sector standing. You have to do all of them concurrently. And we believe that as we have an integrated view of the agriculture sector and putting efforts from poultry to other livestock to food crops, we would be able to be more robust in terms of our food security and be able to meet our food security needs as a country.
Well, if you just tune in, we're coming to you live from Weja Tuba here in Accra, and so the presidential initiative in agriculture and agribusiness is here to engage farmers. And one thing that I really want to know is there are lots of conversation outside. If you want to bridge the gap, tomato gap, it will take some 4 years, and then Chamber of Agribusiness says it will take less than a year. So who is saying the right thing?
Indeed, it will take less than a year. All we need to do is to commit, to galvanize and mobilize the efforts. The thing about agriculture is that it's a mobilization thing. Sure. If you don't deploy mobilization tools in agriculture, you will fail. And so if we are able to mobilize very well, like the strategies that I have enumerated, if we are committing about 60,000 hectares of our irrigated sites to only tomatoes, we would be fine. Remember that there are other sites that are not irrigated, that are mainly producing under rain-fed regimes, and they are producing grains and other vegetables. And there are several irrigation sites that are under development. So the strategy is to commit majority of the irrigation sites to tomato production throughout the year, but also not eliminate the support for other farmers that are doing unirrigated areas, so that whether we are in dry season or we are in the wet season, we would be able to produce enough to maintain a smooth supply chain of tomatoes on the market.
Dr. Peter Boamotukono is the Director of Presidential Initiative in Agriculture and Agribusiness, bringing you the very latest update with engagement they had here with farmers at Weja Tuba Kemini.
Well, George, with that report from Weja, thank you so much, George.